Hello, Dr. Sushma Singh this side. Today in Unit 2, Emergence of Discipline Issues and Themes. We are continuing our topic Historical Roots of Sociology in India. As we have read earlier in the previous unit, the British officials were convinced about the justification and necessity for collecting this vast quantity of data about Indian society and culture. It is the contributions of such officials as Wilson Dishley, Brain, Blunt, Thurston, O'Malley, Hutton, and Guha that the census has become an invaluable source of information not only for demographic studies but for the social and cultural analysis as well. The range and quantity of data collected have increased greatly since independence, but for an outstanding exception, the omission of the data regarding caste. The census had, however, led to far-reaching disturbance in the society. It set into motion certain forces of change in Indian society and especially the caste system, which has left a strong impact. The attempts to collect data regarding castes and their hierarchy or social division in each census sharpened the self-awareness of each caste and gave rise to competition among them to claim higher position in the caste. These efforts was generally preceded by improvement in the economic status of these castes in their region particularly. Each caste saw in the census a ready-made avenue for obtaining the government's approval for social mobility. The census offices were flooded with applications from caste leaders claiming higher status. The 1941 status omitted caste as a category for economic reasons. However, it was only in 1951 that the recording of data on the caste basis except for the data on the scheduled caste and tribes was omitted as a matter of policy. Ideological study also simultaneously contributed to as well as received stimulus from the efforts made by the British scholars and officials to develop an in-depth knowledge of Indian society and culture. K.M. Kapadia mentions that as early as 1776 a treatise on Hindu law in English was prepared with the assistance of Pandits for the use of the British judges. The contribution of the great British Orientalist Sir William Jones was also immense. He began the study of Sanskrit and Indology and is well known for having established the Asiatic Society of Bengal in 1787. One of the main activities of the society was the publication of a journal devoted to antiquarian and anthropological interest. The study of Sanskrit provided a powerful stimulus not only to Indology but to other disciplines as well, such as philology, comparative methodology, and comparative jurisprudence. Another major development which led to the study of social institutions in India was the introduction of British education and its impact. It set several forces of social change in motion, such as developing a sensitivity among the Indian intellectuals and social reformers like Raja Ram Mohan Rai, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, etc. Regarding the social evils of sati, child marriage, illiteracy, poverty, and the orthodoxy of Hindu religion, thus the confrontation with the alien culture of the British rulers and the interpretation of ancient Indian literature by scholars like Max Muller sharpened and redefined the self-awareness of the Indian elite. It resulted in a critical appraisal and reinterpretation of Indian culture and led to its social reform. There have been many other studies of Indian society and culture, village studies, studies of law, which together have sowed the seeds for the emergence and growth of sociology and anthropology in India. In the next section, we will learn about the growth of sociology and its professionalization in India. Now let us move to the next point, growth and development of sociology as a profession. The disciplines of sociology and anthropology has developed in India in broadly three phases. The first phase is the period between 1773 to 1900 when, as described earlier, the founders for its growth were laid. The second phase is the period between 1901 to 1950 when the two disciplines became professionalized, and finally the third phase is the period after India gained independence. During this phase, a complex of forces influenced the development of two disciplines. Planned development, introduction of constitution and parliamentary democracy led to far-reaching changes in the Indian society and its structure. During this period, the Indian scholars were exposed to the work of their foreign colleagues, which influenced their own work. Also, availability of a fund helps conduct research in several areas. So, it was in the beginning of the 20th century that the two disciplines entered the early phase of professionalization. Srinivas mentions that although the bulk of the ethnographic work continued to be carried out by the British officials associated with the census operations, professional sociologists and anthropologists in Europe began taking interest in India. W.H.R. Rivers published his study The Todas based on the intensive fieldwork. This was one of the first monographs in the modern social anthropological tradition. Rivers did his fieldwork among the Todas, a tribe in the Nilgiri hills in the South India. In the winter of 1901 and 2, and his interest in India continued almost until his death in 1922. He had also published papers on India, such as on the origin of hypergamy, kinship, and marriage in India in the first issue of the journal Man in India. His posthumous work, edited by W.J. Parry Social Organization, was intended to be delivered as a course of lectures in Calcutta University. Two of his students, J.S. Gurye and K.P. Chattopadhyay, came to play an important role in the development of sociology and social anthropology in India. Rivers' influence continued to be exist in the worlds of J.S. Gurye and K.P. Chattopadhyay, who had held important academic positions in their respective University of Bombay and Calcutta till the 1940s. The influence of Malnausanki and Radcliffe Brown came later, as they remained relatively unknown till the end of the World War II. Radcliffe Brown studied the Andaman Islanders. During this period, several European sociologists such as C. Bogle and M. Moss and Max Weber wrote on India, relying on secondary sources. Dhanagara says that the institutionalization and professionalization of sociology and social anthropology in India have two clearly identifiable phases, the pre-1950 phase and the post-1950 phase. Moreover, 1950 to 1952 is also a watershed in the historical sense that it was then that Free India embarked on programs of planned development. The pre-1950 phase was essentially a phase of multi-level synthesis. It was not without significance that both the disciplines had their beginning in the two cities of Bombay and Calcutta, which symbolically represented colonialism. The beginnings were more or less simultaneous in the second decade of the 20th century. During the first decade of the 20th century, two Indian scholars, L.K. Anantaraksha Iyer and S.C. Roy, made their mark in anthropology. Both lacked formal training in the discipline, but their achievements were noteworthy. Anantaraksha Iyer studied the castes and tribes of Cochin and Mysore and also a study of the Syrian Christian of Kerala. Roy, who was a lawyer by profession, wrote monographs on some of the tribes in Bihar. He was also a champion of his tribe. In 1921, he founded the journal Man in India, which is still in circulation. He also wrote a book called Caste, Race and Religion in India. The development of anthropology in India crossed a new milestone in 1905 when the British government conceded the demand for establishing the ethnographic survey. The output of these surveys can be seen in the form of District Gazetteer and Imperial Gazetteer of India. These covered details on different types and castes of each province. Many other efforts were made to collect, collate and analyze data relating different caste, communities and tribes in India. In the previous chapter, we had a brief discussion on these developments. We had a brief overview of the growth of sociology and anthropology in independent India. The next section will describe the later developments a little more elaborately. Here we want to close this lecture. Thanks for listening.